Hey everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of While You're Working Live. This is episode 26, and we have a really great topic that we discuss all the time here in the Rogue offices, and I'm sure it's a topic that you guys discuss in your offices and your daily lives in the marketing world too. It's something that our guest so aptly said right before this, is that it just needs a little bit of a shift on the conversation around it. So I'm excited to get into a little bit more details on that. So if you're sitting there and you've experienced some increased questioning about how spend is allocated across channels, if you maybe need a new approach to explaining why a multi-channel attribution will help reduce marketing budgets and more effectively allocate your budgets currently, or if you need an argument as to why just placing all your budget into a billboard off the side of the highway is not the right move, then this episode is for you. So let me go into introducing our guests today. First off, I want to introduce you, Whit Whitley. Hey, Whit.
Hey there.
Thank you for joining us. Whit, I had the pleasure of working with her here at Rogue, and I'm so glad that she was able to join our episode today. Whit is the founder of Start Smart Now, a boutique digital agency, and she's also the CEO of a company that is really interesting, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about that, called drerickz.com. And it's all about holistic essential oils, I believe. What are some of the exciting things y'all are doing over there, Whit?
Hey, thank you, Ashley. And I just want to say first, it's great to be back with my friends at Rogue, where I worked.
Great having you here.
And hi, James. I worked as an analyst there for several years, and it's where I first went down the analytics rabbit hole. So I am forever grateful to you guys. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Eric Z. Dr. Eric Zielinski, aka Dr. Z, is the author of the national bestseller, The Healing Power of Essential Oils. And he and his wife, Sabrina, known as Mama Z, started their online ministry, drerickz.com, in 2014. And we now have more than 1 million page views every month. And we're rapidly becoming the #1 source for biblical health and non-branded essential oils education in the world. So it's been a very exciting time, a lot of rapid growth. And it's kind of like, hold on tight because we're moving fast, which is very exciting. And it's also a big challenge from an analytics point of view.
That's awesome. Yeah, you had some really great insights and stories about your time there. And so I look forward to getting into that a little bit more here shortly. Today, also, we have James Loomstein, one of the managing partners of Rogue. He's been on a few past episodes with us. And if you've seen those, and I'm sure you guys are just super excited to have him back, he's going to provide some really great insights on this topic as well. Hey, James.
Hey, it's nice to be back. So glad to be in the rotation.
Yes, you're back, and we've got a really great show topic today. So we'll just we'll jump right into things. I know I mentioned a little bit about why you'd benefit from watching this episode, but I want to just start off with the basics. And last click attribution is something that I know I heard a lot about, but I admittedly didn't know fully what it meant or what the different areas of attribution were. And so it took a little bit of a learning curve for me to really dive into it and understand fully what it is. So I want to talk to you guys both, just generally speaking, what is last click attribution and why is it something that people should pay attention to and maybe shift the conversation around?
And Whit, I'd love to have you, start off and kick off the conversation for us.
Thank you. I want to back up one step and talk about what is attribution modeling.
Perfect.
So an attribution model in general is a method for deciding which traffic source gets credit for a conversion along the conversion path on your website. And last click attribution is one type of attribution model. In last click attribution, it gives 100% of the credit for a conversion to the last click just before the person converted on your website. Now, of course, before you can make use of last click attribution or any attribution model, you have to decide what counts as a conversion on your website and for your business and how you're going to track it. So assuming you've defined a conversion and you've got tracking in place, then you're able to talk about and decide what kind of attribution model you want to use.
I think that's a really good insight, and I'd love to hear kind of James's next phase on that. I feel like you've got a good.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I feel it starts with having the infrastructure in place, and I think there's not enough value put on infrastructure and systems and technology. Digging deep to make sure you have this stuff and the technology in there to even start the conversation. And I think too many companies, take last click attribution as belief, and they're not actually looking, to Whit's point, about all the things that happen along that purchase path where they're actually a moment of influence, what Rogue we call a micro yes. Like, what are the things that actually happen that made that conversion happen ultimately? And to your point, the web has become incredibly complex. There is mobile, desktop, some people still use tablets, etc. There is offline, all these things are factoring in, and too many people are just looking at a spreadsheet and a cost and then deciding this was ROI positive or it was not.
To me, it sounds like the conversation has maybe just gone down a rabbit hole, to use your word, Whit. And it started because it was a learning curve in marketers, digital marketers, and everybody trying to understand a little bit better, not only the capabilities of all the things that you can use in the various attribution phases. And sometimes I think the old Mad Men style of that ad in the newspaper really got us all the leads. So I think maybe that's where the last click attribution has just kind of gained the strength over some of the other attribution models. But I know that there are several other ones, but I'm more interested to know, Google recently said that they were going to stop recognizing last click attribution. I'd love to hear your thoughts a little bit more on why they are saying that may be inevitable here in 2018.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to make one point about last click attribution though, because I don't want to give the impression that it's not valuable, because it is. And I think what's important is to understand that it answers one question really, really well. And the question it answers is, where was the person and what did they click just before visiting your website and converting?
Mm-hmm.
That's an important question to answer.
Absolutely.
No matter what model you use. But what's happening is that it's now become one part of a bigger marketing picture, where last click attribution, it's not evolving so much as its role in marketing analytics analysis is evolving, which brings us to Google. And
done.
Yeah.
If Google says to jump, we just ask how high.
Yeah. So basically, if you're a user of Google Analytics, because there are other analytics products out there, and you can use other analytics products in conjunction with analytics to get a different perspective. But I mean, it's a free product for most businesses, and you are subject to how Google decides to process data, including conversion data. Now, I think this rumor that Google will stop supporting last click attribution, I think it's an indication that Google is ready to force businesses to accept the reality that people interact with brands through multiple touch points across multiple devices before converting. Now, I don't see this move as any different from their March 26th announcement this year to roll out mobile first indexing, which, they warned everybody, but now it's forcing businesses to make sure the mobile versions of their web pages are as robust as their desktop versions are. So I think it's more of Google being a change agent in the industry, and they're able to do this, and they're saying, hey, it doesn't mean last click. I don't think it means last click isn't important anymore. I think it just means that last click needs to be part of a more holistic approach to attribution modeling. And it is one touch point on a multi-touch point conversion path, because it's really, in today's landscape, it's too difficult to say which touch point deserves the almighty credit
So I
for
think
the conversion.
to that point, I think one thing that's happening is this shift from where, marketing and advertising was the arts and crafts, right? Like that's what everyone did. It was just pretty pictures. It was
Make a pretty department.
The pretty department. Yeah, make it pretty. And now you're seeing where, the role of marketing, not as an expense, but, as an asset to an organization, as the thing that drives revenue, as the thing that lowers the cost of acquisition. When people went to college for marketing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they got into it because there'd be no math. And now, like, math is the thing that's leading it. And so actually, I think it is good for advertising. It is good for the market. And Google pulling back on this and showing and sort of explaining how the web works to CFOs and CEOs and organizations, that these are not expenses to your organization, but these are literally investments that drive revenue growth. And you need to understand where people are coming in and out of your funnel, that, they are not, hearts are not won in 7-day click windows anymore, or 30-day click windows, and understanding how people are moving and connecting and engaging with your brand. And I think it's actually thrown more transparency on our industry, which has been good, leading to less waste and more focus on, what dollar am I spending that's either driving $1.20 back in return, or if I spend $1 here and it only gives me 70 cents, that's okay, because it's also the step that got me to the $1.50 return on the next step. And I think that is an important part for companies and brands to really understand.
I agree. And I want to touch a little bit on something you just said, James, about the hearts are not won in 7-day windows, because I think that that's a point that's hard to swallow, is that everybody loves, their own company, and they want everybody else to feel as passionate about it as they do. And I think Whit has a really good story about her own experiences with Dr. Eric Z and how they have used, I'm assuming, some of these different attribution models to help maybe close the gap on what these conversion windows are for their particular clients. And I don't know that it's a 7-day window, but I think that there are different areas that they have in a customer journey that have turned from a 7-day window to somebody considering them to then the last click attribution, and it might be on day 20. So Whit, can you tell us a little bit more about that story?
Yeah, definitely. So we use attribution modeling, but instead of thinking of it as a way to give credit for a conversion, we think of it as influence. So we're trying to answer the question, which channels are influencing people to become leads and then influencing people to become customers. So that concept, that shift from credit to influence, already opens up so many more possibilities for understanding our customer journey, and also being more willing and open as an organization to experiment with different platforms. So I want to give you just a little true story recently. We know that YouTube is the second or third largest search engine in the world behind Google search. So we decided it was time for us to really do something to see if we could leverage YouTube as a search channel to generate not just leads, but revenue. So we applied to be a YouTube partner where we could put call to actions in our informational videos that we've had out all this time. Mm-hmm. And once we got approved for that, we decided to test our new 17-day evergreen funnel. Okay, so it's a long funnel. When you have a lead to a nurture to purchase funnel that's 17 days long, you absolutely need to know first click attribution. You have to know if that lead came through. So we absolutely need to know if that lead came through YouTube, and if they bought on day 15 of the funnel or day 10 or whatever. We need that credit, that revenue, that eventual purchase to go back to YouTube, so we can see if YouTube is a valuable entry point for us. Okay.
So if we could make this as an example for, I think, other brands, I think what you're doing is super smart as always, and something that people can learn from. So I kind of look at it as the way a sales funnel would work, where you're trying to get prospect to market qualified lead, sales qualified lead, conversion, and then allocating a percent of either budget, time, how much effort you want to put towards something, right? And so if you were to take your example and say, I have 100% of my percentage allocation, is it fair to say that you would say, hey, in the YouTube example, hey, we're going to put 20% towards towards YouTube, or 25 or 40, and then 10% towards Google and 5% towards our blog. Like some sort of mathematical formula adds up to 100% and provides brands at least a data point or something to look at that says, hey, we allocated 30% of our budget towards YouTube, and we are saying that it drives, and we're putting it as it's responsible for 25% of pushing people through that funnel. Is that sort of what you're alluding to, or is that how you guys think, or do you think that's a way for business and brands to at least have a perspective and how to use data in a 2018 world?
Yeah, you could approach it that way. We are in the early stages of gathering data on different marketing channels for different purposes, that to just kind of arbitrarily break down how much money we should be spending on each channel. You have to be at a point where you have enough budget to experiment all at once. Sure. On all channels. But given that you have the budget to do the experiment, yes, it would be great. But it's also not just a matter of investing this much and getting that much, but where these attribution models come into play is, so for example, with this example, I'm gonna take one user, Susie. Okay, Susie searches for uses for lavender essential oil on YouTube. She sees our little infographic video that talks about the top 5 uses for lavender oil. She clicks our masterclass link, right, and visits our website, but she doesn't register. But we have a proprietary technology called Analytics Connect, which you can learn more about at startsmartnow.com/ACIO, where I talk a little bit more about this technology, Analytics Connect. Yeah, it creates, this is on top of Google Analytics. So Susie, a cookie is set on Susie in our third-party cookie vault, which is stored on a different server. If Susie doesn't buy then, or doesn't even opt in, that's fine. But let's say a few days later, because and here's how using different platforms for different reasons. We have Facebook retargeting ads. We know that Susie visited. We know she didn't become a lead. We know she didn't buy. We're retargeting automatically on Facebook. She sees our Facebook ad for the masterclass. The second time Susie has heard about our masterclass. She clicks it on Facebook and she converts. When she converts, she gets into our system. We use Infusionsoft. And so she gets a contact ID. Now Analytics Connect matches that initial cookie of YouTube with her contact ID in our system and puts this in a cookie vault. Now, once she becomes a lead, we can know everything about her journey. So with the 17-day funnel, she starts getting emails and she starts watching it. And let's say she signed up on her mobile phone at work, but she wants to watch these videos on her big desktop at home. Well, when she logs in, we know it's Susie. We know Susie's watching from her desktop now. And let's say we still are doing retargeting on Facebook and on Pinterest. So let's say that it's day 10 and she sees an ad on Pinterest, a sales ad. See, we do different campaigns. So she wouldn't see a lead ad anymore. She would see a sales ad. So she sees a retargeting sales ad. We know she's in our funnel. And she clicks on a Pinterest retargeting ad to purchase now. And she purchases on day 11 off of a Pinterest last click ad. What our analytics will tell us, though, it will give, so let's say she spent $100. It will give $100 credit to YouTube because YouTube brought her to us, even though she didn't even convert on YouTube. It was the first time she interacted. It's how she discovered.
So let me actually, because I think that's something you can help people with. And let me push back on $100 to the YouTube. Instead of saying, hey, we have prospects, right, that don't know us. And then we have people in this, quote unquote, sales funnel, right? And let's just separate those two things out. Like, you didn't know them, they were cookied, and then they actually filled out the form. To that point, is it possible that you would say, had not been for that second touch of Facebook, then the Pinterest thing would have never happened? And saying that, yes, you watched the YouTube video, and we are willing to give, 50%, like over half of the attribution of that YouTube. But those other things, the Facebook might get 25, and if it was a third one, that would get something else. And what I think happens to too many brands is they would go back and say, oh, YouTube is our answer. And then they would slash their Facebook budget. But had not been for the Facebook, then that whole entire process would have never happened. And so to your point of percentage allocation across the touch points, there are some that are awareness focused, right? Your YouTube is clearly awareness focused, and that might get a percent. But those ones that are driving consideration and to purchase, intuitively, those would be 30, 40%, 50%, right? Because that's the thing that they needed to actually have them fill out the form ultimately. And then the other parts of that funnel would be, your email and the lead nurture and the time, energy, effort. Like, there's a cost to that as well. And so I guess my argument would be, it's okay to have that first allocation, but that second one is probably equally or more important because that was the consideration part of the customer journey. Whereas your YouTube was only awareness, which is probably your cheapest form of attention, and your most expensive is that consideration part of the formula.
Yeah. So you bring everything you say is like, those are all excellent points. And so when we talk about this as an organization, we talk about influence. So we do know that YouTube, in fact, and this is why we're experimenting with it, is our cheapest because we already have all these videos. All we did was add a call to action to them. People are already searching over there. We already know this. It's like built-in traffic. Mm-hmm. And here's where marketers, and here's where C-level executives need to understand marketing, that you can't, yes, we can say on a first click attribution model, and again, we have to caveat, first click attribution model, YouTube gets $100 revenue credit, because had it not been for our efforts on YouTube, we would have never got that customer possibly. Okay. But you almost have to be everywhere all the time, but in different ways. If we look at Facebook as an influencer to convert and its role there, we know how much money it actually allows us to put more money into Facebook retargeting because we have almost no money on the front end of YouTube. So it's like we have marketing paths. We have a YouTube, and then we have a social retargeting path. So it's like YouTube social retargeting. We might have organic search, social. We're finding that social retargeting is really, really important to influencing people, as you say, in that consideration stage. It's also a good channel, of course, to generate new leads, but it's helping us think differently about the awareness phase and how we can make that a more affordable way of marketing. Because if you're doing Google paid search as your awareness phase, that's tough, right?
Well, that's a good point. And I think the business side of what you're I think the business argument would say, or at least to put some color on it, would say, hey, business brand or CEO or CFO, you are overstating the awareness stage and understating the consideration of the thing that moved them to actually purchase in the end. So you're putting way too much credit to the first page, and you're disproportionate, and you're not spreading that across all the customer journey moments up to purchase. Loyalty and advocacy can be a whole separate conversation, but to the point of, just from awareness to purchase, there is that opportunity to have a percent budget allocation. And I know that has a lot to do with like omnichannel and how brands are looking at their finances, how they are rolling out budget allocations. The cost of attention continues to go up every single day. There seems to be more channels available than ever before. And to your point, you do have to be everywhere. But I think what's probably the biggest takeaway is the prioritization of the places you want to be by the customer journey moment.
Right. I also think Whit made a good point, though, because everybody wants to, it's attractive to do the right thing in marketing and make sure you have everything along the journey of your customer journey. But I do want to say that, Whit, you said something that I thought is so simple, but I think it's overlooked, and that everybody wants to do that thing, is that you guys already had all these resources on YouTube. And so it was a cheap, resourceful way for you guys to, I don't want to say attack the awareness phase, but it's like in sports or in soccer. They used to tell me to play the way that I'm facing. And so you guys just played the way that you're facing. You had all these assets already on YouTube, instead of saying, we need to create all these assets to go onto YouTube and try this whole channel. And then next thing you know, you're in the hole and it's not working as fast as you want to. And people get discouraged and then they stop doing it before it actually gets to that phase. So I think there's a little level of play the way you're facing with the assets that you do have, in addition to making sure you do the right thing and attacking the right phase of the customer journey. So to that point, I want to kind of get wrapped up to this episode here. I know we could talk for days about this topic because it's very, very relevant. But I want to kind of wrap things up by just asking both of you your opinions on, do you think businesses have the appetite for a more holistic attribution approach? Or do you think that's going to come in 2020 when more channels are here?
Whit, do you have an opinion?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, my days as an analyst before becoming a COO, I experienced a lot of unwillingness of executive leadership teams, or just, any decision makers, to consider any other approach to attribution modeling other than last click, or other than a single way of looking at it. And in that, when trying to explain other models such as first click or linear or time decay or position based or assisted conversion approach,
which we'll all explain on our blog post when we, after the show, we'll have all those explained up there. So
awesome. There always seemed like confusion ensued. And then it was followed by pushback because I don't understand this. It was the pushback. And eventually it was just an unwillingness to even have a conversation about attribution from a holistic perspective. And I've seen this, my experience on the analyst side and on the PPC strategist side and on the agency side is that it just creates a deadlock. There's no way to move forward when that's the attitude. So I'm hoping that there will be an appetite for businesses to start to want to get hungry to understand how using different attribution models might help them understand their customers more and understand how users are interacting with their businesses. And just for us, like, we might use first click to give official attribution credit, but we use assisted conversion approach to understand all of the touch points along the way and influence, and to, as James pointed out, be able to parcel out percentages to different channels. And also, I do think leveraging, again, as James mentioned, the infrastructure for tracking is so critical, because even if Facebook was a second or third touch point on a purchase journey for one of our customers who maybe came in through that YouTube channel, that Facebook pixel and our third-party technology sends back that credit to Facebook itself. So in Facebook Business Manager, that $100 will show up in Facebook because Facebook was on the conversion path for that particular lead. So what I'm even saying is that it may not be that one attribution model is all you need, because we use two. We use first click and we use assisted conversion approach to try to understand awareness and then influence. So will it happen before 2020?
I'm also, and I mean, it's kind of interesting because we would hope that maybe it's a little bit further along in the willingness to have the conversations phase. But I think that with all the recent changes to and the regulations with GDPR that have come along, and the transparency with what data is being collected on users, I think that's just going to, I think it's going to bring up a lot of maybe more questions. So the conversation part might actually happen more than we're thinking because of all the news on that. But I think it's only going to make things just that much more complicated to attribute along the different attribution models. James, what were you?
To that point, I think it's really interesting. So I think that Facebook and Google were kind of shunned or like not as important in a 2000, 2005, 2010, 2012 world, right? Like, it was nice to have. It wasn't the thing that was leading my business. And now all that's being taken away. And it's like, wait a minute, like, well, maybe there was something really good here. And they didn't understand, these businesses and brands and CFOs and CMOs and CEOs didn't understand the mountain of gold that they were actually standing on. And people would, in the agency world or digital marketing, were, screaming as loud as they could, like, hey, maybe you should put $100 towards a Facebook ad, and just if nothing left to learn about your customers. They're like, no, I'm going to go spend $100,000 on radio, TV, print, and billboards. But thank you very much. And now they don't. Now they're like, oh, well, maybe there was some gold there. But to that point, I think that if we can get the conversation away from thinking in 30-day windows or 90-day Wall Street quarters, and about the life and journey of what these customers are going through, I think those are the things that will allow the patience of brands to see what's working, the perspective to understand where their marketing dollars are being spent in the most efficient and effective way possible, and allowing them to help tell the story about, here are the channels that we would use and prioritize for each part of the customer journey. And here's how we're actually maximizing our dollars. I read an article in Forbes last year about KPIs and measuring things as ROI positive or not is insane. And it is, because, to your point, Ashley, and to you, Whit, as well, that, hey, I spent this $100 on Monday. On Wednesday, I did not make back $110. So therefore, this channel doesn't work for me. And so those are actually the things that are hurting brands from actually, from moving forward. And quick story, there was an article on Purple, so the mattress company, who does a phenomenal job of marketing and remarketing and making sure that they stay in front of you. And the story was that this person bought a purple butt pillow that saw the ad on Facebook And unfortunately, if you were in the purple analytics department, you would have never given credit to Facebook. And we can post the article too, but it goes through, I saw this ad on Facebook. I was interested. I asked my friends and family if they've used purple before. I watched a YouTube video. I went to the site, and then I ultimately bought it on Amazon. And so if you're in the analytics department of purple, you're like, oh, well, Amazon, clearly that's my thing. And not thinking about all the things that led to the awareness or the fixed costs of putting together the content put on their site, which isn't free, either video or blogs or content people or videographers or photographers, right? That's a fixed cost as well. And they weren't thinking about all those things that the person went through. And so this article by Bill Bean was like, Facebook is a great thing, and it just didn't get the credit that it deserved. And it was like, unfortunately, that Amazon is going to get all this credit. And I think that story plays out brand after brand, story after story. And they're just looking at like the thing and not all the stuff that had to happen to make that thing happen.
Yeah, that is such a great point, because when I say you really need to be everywhere, I really mean that. Like, if you're going to be a business who is committed to getting your brand out there in today's, not just digital landscape, but in today's world, you need to understand that a lot of people are going to all these different places. It's not a Pinterest audience and a Facebook audience and a YouTube audience and a Google search audience. Everybody ends up at some point or another. A lot of the population ends up on all these different like watering holes, so to speak. Sure. And if you would be silly not to want to be there.
Well, you can't afford to be everywhere. If someone said you had $1 million or 10 million or 100, that would be fine, but they don't. But I think the real takeaway is the prioritization of where to be for what KPI metric you're trying to achieve, or for what gate you're trying to move people through. Like, if you can get to that point, if you're like, we are using Facebook for awareness, or we are using YouTube for consideration, or we are making a fixed cost investment in video, right, to put up, or hiring content people to write content, and we are putting that for our consideration. Like, if you can just get to that point, like, that is a monumental move forward, and allows the opportunity to look at things as not ROI positive or not, but how people are actually moving through that customer journey, and how you're actually maximizing your dollar spent on advertising and proportionately pushing it out to the places that actually influence and move people through that journey.
Guys, I'm just going to slow clap it, because this is a really great conversation. And I almost feel like I want to suggest that we do a part 2 of this particular topic episode here in a couple weeks. But I thank you for joining us today. I hope that you found a lot of these insights to be helpful to your everyday conversations within your businesses or within your agencies. Like we mentioned, a lot of these articles and tools that were mentioned in today's episode, we will post on our blog, where we will have this episode living as well. And we will shoot that out on all of our social media channels, so that way you guys can find this and find those resources as well. Again, thank you for joining us this week. Thanks for the great comments that I showed from our friend Brian there. He was making a few other comments, but we appreciate the participation, and we will catch you guys next week on another episode of While You're Working Live. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.